that night. The knock on his door didn't just interrupt dinner, it reopened a past he had buried for 20 years. Rain poured relentlessly from the sky, drumming against the tin roof like a warning that refused to be ignored. The wind slipped through the cracks in the walls, carrying a chill that wrapped itself around everything inside the small, aging house. Inside, a dim yellow bulb flickered slightly above a wooden table that had seen better days. Its surface was scratched, worn, and uneven, just like the life of the man sitting beside it. Arman Khan's sleeves were rolled up, his hands rough from years of labor. There was a quiet heaviness in his posture, the kind that didn't come from physical exhaustion alone, but from carrying something much deeper. Across from him sat his daughter, Maya, 8 years old, bright-eyed and full of life. She was the only color in his otherwise faded world. She tore a small piece of bread, dipping it into the lentils carefully as if it were a delicacy. "Baba," she said softly. Arman looked up, forcing a gentle smile. Do rich people eat this too?" He paused for a second. The question was simple, innocent, but it hit harder than it should have. He leaned back slightly, pretending to think. "Maybe," he said. "But I don't think it tastes as good for them," Maya giggled. "Why?" "Because they don't eat it with someone who loves them this much." She smiled wide, satisfied with the answer, and went back to eating. Arman watched her quietly. In moments like these, he felt both grateful and guilty. Grateful that she was happy. Guilty that he couldn't give her more. After dinner, Maya helped him gather the plates. "I'll wash them," she said proudly. Arman chuckled. "No, you'll break them." "I won't," she protested. "You said that last time." "That was different," she insisted. "That plate was already weak." Arman laughed softly, shaking his head. "Go do your homework. I'll handle this." She made a face but obeyed, skipping toward the small corner that served as her study space. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. As Arman washed the dishes, his mind drifted, as it always did when silence took over. Memories, uninvited, but persistent. A different time, a different life, a different version of himself. One that smiled more, one that believed in things, one that didn't run away. He shut off the tap abruptly, gripping the edge of the sink. "Stop," he muttered under his breath. But the past didn't listen. It never did. "Baba?" Maya called from across the room. He snapped back. "Yes? I finished my homework. Already?" She nodded proudly. "Come check." He walked over, crouching beside her. The notebook was neat, careful, every letter written with effort. "You've improved," he said gently. Her eyes lit up. "Really? Really? Will I become a teacher one day?" Arman smiled. "You can become anything you want." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then I'll become something big, so I can take care of you." His smile faded just slightly. "You already do," he whispered. Later that night, Maya fell asleep quickly, curled up under a thin blanket. Arman sat beside her for a while, watching her breathe, peacefully, safely, the only promise he had ever managed to keep. He stood up quietly and walked toward the window. The rain had gotten heavier. The streets outside were empty, washed in darkness and flickering streetlights. For a moment everything felt still, and then knock, K-N-O-C-K, K-N-O-C-K, Arman froze. The sound echoed through the house, sharp, deliberate, unfamiliar. No one ever came here, no relatives, no friends, no one. Another knock, louder this time, more impatient. Maya stirred slightly in her sleep. "Baba?" she murmured. "It's okay," he said quickly. "Go back to sleep." But his voice wasn't convincing, even to himself. He walked toward the door. Each step felt heavier than the last. A strange feeling settled in his chest. Not fear. Not exactly. Something else. Something familiar. He reached for the handle, paused, took a breath, and opened the door. The world outside seemed to slow down. Rain fell in sheets, blurring everything beyond a few feet. But the figure standing there was crystal clear. A woman, tall, composed, unshaken by the storm, dressed in a sleek black coat that hugged her frame perfectly. Her posture was straight, confident, like someone who had spent years being in control. Her heels stood firm against the wet ground, untouched by the chaos around her. But it wasn't her appearance that stopped him. It was her eyes, sharp, cold, and painfully Familiar, Armin's breath caught. His fingers tightened on the door. No, he whispered. The woman took a small step forward. The porch light revealed her face more clearly, older, stronger, changed, but unmistakable. Arman Khan? She said calmly. Her voice was steady, controlled, but beneath it, something burned. I've been looking for you. Time seemed to collapse in on itself. 20 years, gone, in a single second. Maya's small voice came from behind him. Baba! Who is she? The woman's gaze shifted slightly, looking past Arman at the little girl standing barefoot in the dim light. For a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not hatred, something softer, something dangerous. But it vanished just as quickly. Arman stepped outside, pulling the door halfway closed behind him. What are you doing here? He asked, his voice low, urgent. Why now? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied him, as if comparing the man in front of her to the one she once knew. You look different, she said. There was no warmth in it. Just observation. So do you, Arman replied, a beat past. Then she spoke again. I won't take much of your time. Her tone was formal now, almost professional. And then she said the words that shattered everything. I'm here to collect a 20-year debt. The rain intensified as if the world itself reacted. Arman stared at her, confused, shaken. What are you talking about? Her lips curved into a faint smile, not kind, not forgiving, just knowing. You really don't remember. Do you? She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the details, the faint scar near her eyebrow, the slight tension in her jaw, the strength she had built over years of surviving something he had caused. Zoya, he whispered. The name hung between them, heavy, unfinished. Yes, she said quietly. Zoya. There was a time when that name meant something entirely different. Laughter in crowded classrooms. Shared dreams under open skies. Late-night conversations that felt endless. She was warmth, hope, love, and he had walked away from all of it. Arman swallowed hard. What do you want? He asked again. This time there was fear in his voice. Zoya reached into her bag, slowly, deliberately. She pulled out a thick file. Read it. He hesitated, then took it, his fingers trembling slightly. Inside were documents, legal papers, signatures, official stamps. His eyes moved quickly across the pages, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand. And then they stopped, on a name. Maya Khan, his heart dropped. What is this? He whispered. Zoya looked at him, directly, unflinchingly. This, she said slowly, is the price of the life you chose. Inside the house, Maya stood quietly, watching through the small gap in the door. Her little heart sensing something was wrong, even if she didn't understand what. Outside, Arman looked up, his voice breaking. You can't do this. Zoya's eyes didn't soften, not even a little. You did. Thunder crashed in the distance as she turned, walking away into the rain, each step steady. Certain, unstoppable. But just before she disappeared into the darkness, she stopped. Without turning back, she said, You have 3 days, Arman. A pause, heavy, final. After that, her voice dropped, colder than the rain. I take what's mine. And then, she was gone. Arman stood there, frozen, the file slipping slightly in his grip. Rain soaking through his clothes, but he didn't feel it. Because something far worse had already consumed him. Behind him, Maya's small voice trembled. Baba, what's happening? He turned slowly, looking at her. Really looking at her, fear crept into his chest. For the first time, not for himself, but for her. Because the past he ran from had finally found him. Sometimes, the past doesn't come back to haunt you. It comes back to claim everything you love. Arman didn't sleep that night, not even a second. Maya lay curled beside him, her breathing slow and steady, unaware that her world was teetering on the edge of an invisible cliff. He sat on the edge of his own bed, the rain still drumming against the windows, the faint yellow glow from the lamp casting shadows across his face. The file Zoya had left behind lay open on the table across the room, its contents etched into his mind. Documents, legal papers, and the name that pierced his chest more painfully than any knife could. Maya Khan. Arman whispered to himself, barely audible over the storm. Why now? Zoya, why after all these years? You have 3 days, Arman. After that, I take what's mine. He clenched his fists, the weight of helplessness pressing down on him. From the memory of what he had done, but he could never outrun the consequences. He thought back to the first time he met Zoya, university campus, crowded corridors, laughter spilling from the classrooms. She had been bright and fearless, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders, eyes alight with mischief. He remembered how she had smiled at him across the cafeteria, how a single glance had been enough to pull him into her orbit. They had shared everything: the notes for exams, the long walks under the moonlight, quiet confessions and whispered dreams. Slowly, inevitably, love blossomed, pure, unguarded, uncheckable, at least in their youthful minds. Then came the night that changed everything. Zoya had stood before him in the dimly lit corridor, her hands trembling. "Arman, I need to tell you something," she had said, her voice breaking slightly. He had smiled, trying to reassure her. "You sound serious. What is it?" Her eyes, wide and wet with unshed tears, had met his. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, the world had stopped. Arman had felt a shock, a jolt that rattled him to the core. His first instinct had been disbelief, then panic, then fear. "What?" He had managed to whisper, his voice barely audible. He had dreams, ambitious, fragile, desperate dreams that he believed could never survive the weight of responsibility. "I can't do this," he said suddenly, almost violently. Zoya froze, her heart shattering at the words. "What do you mean?" "I have a future. A career. I can't ruin it now." "Ruin it?" she whispered, disbelief bleeding into her tone. "This is our child. How could you say that?" The morning after the knock, Arman awoke to the persistent tapping of rain against the windows. He had resolved, though with a trembling heart, that he would face Zoya. He couldn't ignore her, not when the fate of Maya, his daughter, hung in the balance. He dressed quickly, grabbing the file and cradling it like a fragile piece of his heart. He left the house, rain soaking through his jacket, streets glistening with reflections of the storm above. Every step toward Zoya's office felt heavier than the last, weighted with anticipation and dread. When he arrived at her building, a sleek glass tower piercing the gray sky, he hesitated at the entrance. This was a world he had no place in, a world Zoya had conquered without him. Power radiated from every corner of the lobby, polished marble and sharp angles reflecting a life built from determination and pain. "Do you have an appointment?" a receptionist asked politely, glancing up from her desk. "No," Arman said, his voice firm despite the quiver beneath. "But she wants to see me." A tense silence hung in the air. Moments stretched into an eternity until he was finally led to her office. The doors opened, revealing Zoya, standing by the window, her back straight, her posture regal. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked finally, her voice calm but icy. Arman swallowed. I need to understand. I need to know why you came after me after all this time." Zoya turned slowly, her eyes piercing through him, as though seeing every weakness, every regret he had tried to bury. "I won't do this out of anger. This isn't about revenge. This is about balance." He clenched his fists, his voice trembling. "Balance? You want to take Maya from me? How is that balance?" Zoya's gaze softened momentarily. Just enough for him to catch a glimpse of the girl she had once been, the woman he had loved. Then it hardened again, sharper than any blade. "You left me, Arman. You abandoned everything. She's my daughter. She's mine. You can't take her." "Can't?" Zoya repeated, her voice almost amused in its control. "You didn't think about what you were taking from me when you walked away." Her words hit him harder than he expected. Every memory from 20 years ago surged back, her tears, her pleading, the absolute betrayal of her trust. And now, he was staring into her eyes, realizing she had become more than he had ever imagined. She had become power itself, forged from pain and determination. He tried to speak to explain, but the words faltered. Nothing he could say could undo the years of absence, the years of silent suffering that had shaped her into the person she had become. And understand the stakes, Armand. Your daughter, your life, it's all connected to choices made long ago. Armand's fingers shook as he took the file. Each page seemed to burn in his hands, the signatures, the legal forms, the implications. And then he saw it. Maya Khan, his daughter's name, written in ink that felt like it had been etched with accusation. His world stopped. "What is this?" he whispered, disbelief and fear mingling in his voice. "This," Zoya said, voice steady, "is the life you abandoned, the consequences you refused to face, and the responsibility that has been passed down to you whether you are ready or not." Armand's knees threatened to buckle. He looked at her, searching for some trace of the girl he once knew, the woman he had loved. But all he saw was a force of nature, unyielding, unwavering, unstoppable. He turned, glancing back toward the doorway where Maya had been watching, sensing that something in the air had changed. He couldn't let her see his fear, not now. Not ever. "You have 3 days, Armand," Zoya said finally, her voice dropping, almost a whisper. 3 days to set things right, or what is mine will be taken. And then she was gone. The storm outside seemed to intensify as he stood there, the weight of the file pressing down on him as if it carried the full measure of his sins. The past he had run from, the mistakes he had tried to bury, had found him, and now it demanded reckoning. Armand sank into a nearby chair, staring at the empty space where she had been. His mind raced. Questions tumbled over one another. What had happened in the years he didn't see her? Why now? And most importantly, what did she want from Maya? The rain continued to beat against the glass, relentless and insistent, mirroring the turmoil in his chest. He felt small, powerless, trapped between the past and the impossible demands of the present. Maya's soft voice from behind him snapped him back to reality. "Baba, what's happening?" Armand turned to her, kneeling beside her bed once more. "Nothing, Beta, nothing at all." But the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Because he knew the truth. The past had come calling. And he had no idea if he could protect the only thing in the world that truly mattered to him. He clutched the file, staring out the window at the storm-lashed streets. Somewhere out there, Zoya moved with purpose. Somewhere out there, a reckoning waited. And he realized with a cold certainty that his life and Maya's would never be the same again. The first light of dawn struggled to pierce through the heavy clouds, spilling a grayish glow across Armand's small house. His mind was a tangle of fear, guilt, and desperation, each thought pressing harder than the last. He hadn't slept. Not really. Not since Zoya's sudden appearance at his door. Her words echoed relentlessly. 3 days, Armand. After that, I take what's mine. Armand paced the living room, the file clutched tightly in his hands. His fingers had grown white from gripping it too hard, the edges of the papers cutting faintly into his skin. He flipped through them again, as though reading them 100 times could somehow erase the past or bend the future in his favor. Maya's voice broke the silence. "Baba, can I play outside?" He looked at her, and for the first time saw the innocent hope in her eyes, the same hope he had promised to protect, the hope that now seemed impossibly fragile. "Not yet, Beta," he said gently, forcing a calmness he didn't feel. "It's still wet and slippery outside." She pouted but nodded, trusting him without question. That trust made the weight on his chest almost unbearable. He moved to the kitchen, boiling water for tea, but he couldn't focus. Every sound outside, the dripping water, the distant horn of a car, even the soft creak of the floorboards, made him flinch. It felt like the world itself was watching him, judging him for mistakes he thought he had buried 20 years ago. He remembered the first day he had walked away from Zoya. The memory was sharp, stabbing, unyielding. She had pleaded with him in the dim light of her apartment, hands trembling, eyes wide with fear and hope. "Armand, you can't just leave," she had whispered. "I have no choice," he had said, his own voice hollow even to his ears. "I can't give you what you need. I can't give the child what it deserves." You're running away, she had said, tears sliding down her cheeks. That's all you're doing, running. And he had run. Now, 2 decades later, he realized she had never truly let him go. She had transformed that pain, that betrayal, into something formidable, and now she had returned holding him accountable in a way he could never have anticipated. The knock on the door had been just the beginning. It was a signal, a harbinger of what was to come. Zoya wasn't just here to confront him. She was here to reclaim what he had taken from her, what he had abandoned. Armin's mind reeled as he sat down at the table. He opened the file once more, scanning the pages, trying to understand what exactly she wanted. Legal documents, custody papers, evidence of some arrangement he had signed without fully comprehending. And Maya's name, written as though it was already being claimed by Zoya. He couldn't let this happen. Not Maya, not his daughter. His hands trembled as he thought of the next steps. He needed answers, he needed allies, he needed a plan, but most of all, he needed time. 3 days wasn't much. Especially against someone like Zoya. She was no longer the young, vulnerable girl he had known. She had built an empire, carved a life of influence, and had the resources to enforce whatever she believed was rightfully hers. The sound of Maya giggling in the other room pulled him out of his spiral. She was playing with her dolls, oblivious to the storm raging outside and inside. He watched her for a long moment, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the light in her eyes, the small, trusting smile she offered him every day. A sudden determination ignited in Armin. He couldn't let fear paralyze him. He had to fight, no matter how hopeless it seemed. Maya's future depended on it, and maybe, just maybe, he could finally face his own mistakes, finally confront the man he had become and the man he had abandoned years ago. The first call he made was to an old friend, someone who had always been loyal despite the years. The voice on the other end of the line was warm, cautious, but attentive. "Arman, is everything okay?" "Not okay," he admitted, his voice low, urgent. I need help. Something has come back from the past. Something dangerous." There was a pause, and then his friend spoke firmly. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Arman recounted the night Zoya appeared, the file, the words, and the looming deadline. As he spoke, he felt some of the tension ease, not because the problem was smaller, but because sharing it made it tangible, real, manageable. His friend's voice was grave. "She sounds relentless. You have to prepare. Whatever she's planning, she won't back down. But you're not alone." Arman hung up, feeling the weight of responsibility grow heavier even as determination took root. He had to protect Maya. No one else would, if he failed. He turned back to the file, studying it line by line. Every signature, every stamp, every word reminded him of the life he had abandoned and the life he now had to defend. The legal ramifications were complicated, but Arman didn't care about the law yet. He cared about Maya's safety, about keeping her in a world where she could laugh and dream and live without fear. Hours passed, the day stretched on, gray and endless. Arman moved between Maya and the file, between fear and determination, between past regrets and future plans. By evening, he had made a decision. He needed to see Zoya, not to argue, not to beg, but to understand. To confront the truth of what had happened 20 years ago, and why she believed she could claim Maya. He drove to her office, the city lights flickering on in the rain-slick streets. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, heart racing with anticipation and dread. The closer he got, the more memories surfaced, laughter, love, betrayal, and loss. He had to brace himself for the confrontation, for the storm he knew awaited him. Inside, Zoya moved with grace, deliberate and poised. She noticed him immediately, her eyes locking onto his as though she had been expecting him all along. "You came," she said simply, her voice calm, controlled, yet carrying the weight of all the years between them. "I need answers," Arman said firmly, though his voice betrayed his nervousness. "I need to know why you came after me, after all this time." Zoya's gaze was unwavering. "I came for what was always mine," she said, her tone steady. "And for what you refused to protect?" Arman's chest tightened. "You can't take her," he said, gesturing toward the file in his hands. "She's my daughter." "My responsibility? My life?" "Is she?" Zoya countered. "She is mine as much as she is yours. She is the result of a choice you refused to make, a consequence you avoided. Now it is time to face it. Armin's mind raced. There was no arguing with her, no negotiation. Zoya was unyielding, relentless, a force built from the very pain he had caused. And now, that force was standing before him, demanding recompense. I need time, he said, desperate. I need to find a way to prove, to show, that I can protect her, that she belongs with me. Zoya's expression softened for a fleeting moment. 3 days, she reminded him. That is all the time you have. After that, whatever is mine will be claimed. The words were final, chilling, inescapable. Armand left her office, heart pounding, mind whirling with strategies, possibilities, and fears. 3 days. 3 days to confront the past, to defend his daughter, to face Zoya, and to reconcile the man he had been with the man he needed to be. Driving home, the city blurred around him, lights reflecting in the puddles like fragmented memories. Each step closer to home was a step closer to the unknown, to the reckoning he couldn't avoid. Arriving at the house, Maya ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Baba, you're home!" He hugged her back, holding her as if the world itself depended on it, and maybe it did. As he looked into her innocent eyes, he knew one thing with certainty. He could face the storm outside, but he could never survive the storm inside unless he fought for her relentlessly, fearlessly, and with everything he had. The rain had stopped, but the tension in the air remained, heavy and suffocating. The past had returned. The clock was ticking, and the next move would determine everything.
The third day dawned gray and heavy, the clouds hanging low over the city, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Armand woke before sunrise, the weight of the past, present, and future, pressing down on him all at once. Day was the day. Everything would either shatter or finally make sense. Maya was still asleep, her small chest rising and falling gently beneath the thin blanket. Armand looked at her, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the tiny curl of her hair. For her, he could face anything. He brewed tea silently, his hands trembling slightly. Every sip felt like fuel for a battle he wasn't sure he could win. He kept glancing at the file Zoya had left, the legal papers, the evidence, the signatures, the name that had haunted him for 20 years, Maya Khan. Armand's mind wandered to Zoya. She wasn't just a woman. She was a storm of purpose, unyielding, relentless. And yet, he remembered the girl she had once been, the one who had laughed, who had trusted him, who had loved him. Somewhere inside that storm, that girl still existed. He had to reach her, not as an adversary, but as the man who had once promised her a future, even if he had failed. He had to prove he could protect Maya, that he could make up for the choices he had made decades ago. He dressed quickly, trying to steady the nerves that shook his hands. Maya stirred, yawning and rubbing her eyes. "Baba, are we going somewhere?" "Just for a little walk," he said softly. "To get some fresh air before the day begins." But the truth was more complicated. He had to confront Zoya. One final meeting. One chance to save Maya. One chance to face the consequences of the man he had been. The drive to Zoya's office was silent. The streets glistened with wet asphalt, reflections of streetlights stretching like long fingers toward him. He rehearsed his words over and over, each one failing before it even left his lips. Arriving at the building, he stepped into the lobby. Everything was immaculate, cold, controlled, just like Zoya herself. He took a deep breath and walked toward the elevator, his heart pounding in his chest like a warning drum. When the elevator doors opened on her floor, she was waiting. Not behind her desk, not inside an office, right there, in the open hallway. She looked at him, sharp and composed, her presence a blade of ice. "You made it," she said simply. "I came," Armand replied, his voice steady, though the tremor in his hands betrayed him. "I need to talk to you, face this, face you." She studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Talk," she asked. "Do you think words can undo 20 years of choices?" "No," he said quickly. "But maybe they can save what matters most, Maya." For a moment, the human behind the storm flickered. Her gaze softened, just a fraction. "You still don't understand," she said quietly. "This isn't about revenge, Armand. It's about accountability, about what was lost." "I know," he admitted. "I'm ready to face it. To do whatever it takes to make things right." Zoya studied him in silence. Then she gestured toward a nearby conference room. "Sit," she said. Inside the room was stark and cold, a single large window showing the city spread out beneath them. Armand took a seat, the file still in his hands. Zoya remained standing, her posture rigid. "You've avoided this for 20 years, she said. "You've run from the consequences. But Maya, she doesn't deserve to be collateral damage for your mistakes." "I know," Armand whispered. "And I'm asking for a chance. One chance. Let me prove I can protect her. Let me show you I've changed." Zoya's eyes softened slightly, the storm within her barely restrained. "Do you even know what protecting her means?" she asked. "It's not just about food or safety. It's about love, guidance, sacrifice. Are you prepared to do that?" Armand's voice was firm. "Every day, every moment. I will do whatever it takes. I've failed you before, but I won't fail her." For the first time, Zoya's hardened mask faltered completely. She sat across from him, fingers drumming lightly on the table. "You left me," she said softly. "You left us both, and now, I don't know if trust is something you can earn back." "I'll earn it," he said quietly. "I promise." The tension between them was almost unbearable. Silence filled the room, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Finally, Zoya spoke again. "3 days," she said, her voice firm once more. "Proven nothing yet. Maya's life, her future, depends on the choices you make now. Every decision matters." Armand nodded, feeling the enormity of the task before him. He left her office, heart pounding, mind racing. The clock was ticking. 3 days to prove himself, to save Maya, to confront the mistakes of his past. Back home, he sat with Maya, holding her small hand in his. He told her stories, played games, tried to keep the fear from her eyes, but he couldn't hide the storm that waited beyond the walls of their small house. That night, as he watched her sleep, he whispered, "I won't let anything happen to you, Beta, I swear." The next morning, Armand began his preparations. Contacted old friends, gathered legal advice, and tried to anticipate every move Zoya might make. Every step was calculated, every decision weighted with the knowledge that failure was not an option. He drove back to her office, ready to present his case, ready to prove that he could be the father Maya deserved. But as he approached the building, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. Zoya was outside, standing under the awning, waiting for him. But she wasn't alone. 2 men, tall and imposing, flanked her. Their presence sent a chill through Armand's spine. "Baba." Maya's voice whispered in his mind. He clenched his fists. No matter what, he had to protect her. Zoya's eyes met his, unwavering. "This is your final test," she said. "Show me you can handle it, or lose everything." Armand took a deep breath and stepped forward. The rain had returned, drizzling softly, but he felt nothing. His focus was on Maya, on the promise he had made, on the man he needed to become. Every step toward Zoya was a step into the storm. But this time he was not running. He would face the consequences. He would fight for his daughter. He would finally confront the past that had shadowed him for 20 long years. The air crackled with tension, the city blurred around them, and for the first time in decades, Armand felt the full weight of what was at stake. Zoya held the file tightly. Armand held nothing but determination.
Out the rain fell between them, washing the world in gray light.
And then, in a voice steady and commanding, Zoya said, "Show me, Armand. Show me why Maya should be yours." The moment stretched, timeless and electric. This was the point of no return, the day the past collided with the present. The day decisions would determine futures. The day a father would fight for his daughter against the storm that had always been waiting. Armand swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table. His heart pounded, but his resolve was clear. "I will do whatever it takes," he said. "I will protect her, no matter what." Zoya's eyes softened, just enough to betray the faintest glimmer of hope. Perhaps she wanted to believe him. Perhaps she was testing the man who had finally returned. Outside, the city waited, indifferent, while inside, 2 lives, connected by love, betrayal, and the choices of the past, stood on the edge of reckoning. The storm had reached its climax. What happened next would decide everything.